tomorrow you could say something. Thank you very much.
Of course, of course.
Well, 6:15. 2 minutes we got to start. Yeah, yeah.
Marteau. How's everybody feeling?
She's not well. He's
Oy,
fine.
oy, oy, still.
She's not well. She's negative.
She's negative.
She's negative since Monday.
Okay.
Yesterday. But see, what's the Yiddish saying? You make plans and God laughs. What is it?
Man plans and God laughs. But Oy, 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 oy. All right,
We
we'll
did
find
everything
another
right.
date. We'll find another
Yeah,
date.
no. We'll figure it.
Listen, and better now than the wedding night.
Well, that's what everybody says.
Right? Better now than the wedding.
But I mean, I didn't believe Mitch because the joke in the family was he fought his Hebrew name and being called Philip. There was no one. So he says Stanley. I said his Hebrew name, Putz. I says, so I called him up. I said, Moshe Ben Stanley. He says, we're practicing the Brookers, leave us alone. An hour later he calls me and he says, I got a major mini problem. I said, he says, Ari, I'm this cold.
We're going to be 30 seconds to up.
No pressure, okay? No
Where's my glass? I was hoping for a little time before we get started.
Lunchtime tomorrow.
Done.
Mitch, cut it out. I'm not buying it. It's even. Go.
He's here now. I guess he thought it was 6:15.
All right, let me make sure I got everything right. Where are the Torahs?
He did great, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I have one for tomorrow. If I have to sell Ryan. I have one for tomorrow.
Mincha.
178.
Page.
Hold on, wait. That's not the right page. Sorry, 430.
What?
430. Okay. Once again, wishing you all a Shana Tova, Gemar Chatima Tova. And again, is our we'll call it our preamble for our Kol Nidre service in just a few moments. Lenny will be leading us in Mincha. It could be found on page 431 in our Machzorim. And how many years have you been leading this Mincha service before?
40 years plus.
For 40 plus years. And here's to 40 more, Lenny. Once again, take us away, Ashrei, and the Mincha service.
Ashrei vetecha, od yahalalucha selah.
Ashrei am shekach alo, Ashrei am shadonai Elohav.
Malchus o Malchus kol olamim v'memshaltecha v'kol davidar somachin ala kol hanoflim v'zoker l'kol hakfufim. Tilat Adonai yadaber piv v'varech kol baso Hashem kadsho li'olam va'ed v'anachnu nevarech yah me'atah v'yad olam. Hallelujah.
Please rise as we continue with the Chatzi Kaddish. We're on page 432.
Yitkara v'yitkara shemei rabbah.
Amen.
V'yamad v'rachuruteh v'yamlich malchuteh v'chayechanu v'yamechanu v'chayechal beit Yisrael b'agol v'zman korev v'yimaru.
Amen. Yeheshmei Rabba mevorach le'olam le'omei hamaya yitbarach.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpah v'yitrama v'yitnaseh v'yitada v'yitala v'yitala shemei rekudisha.
Brichu.
Li'ela mikol v'chasa b'shirasa tushbechasa v'nechamasa l'amiram b'yolma v'yimaru.
Amen. We'll continue with the Amidah out loud together, page 433.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah El Agadol Agibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zocher Chatei Avot v'Imahot U'Mevi Goel Livnei B'neihem L'man Shemo B'Yahava Zachrenu L'chaim Melech Hafetz B'chaim V'chatfenu B'Sefer HaChaim L'mancha Elohim Chaim Melech Ozel Poked U'Moshiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham U'Poked Sarah Atah Gibar Li'olam Adonai Mechayim Meitim Atah Rav L'Hoshia Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed Mechayim Meitim B'Rachamim Rabim
Somech Noflim V'Rofech Olim Umatir Asurim Umekayim Emunato Lishenei Afar Mikamocha Bal Givurot Umidol Melach Melech Memit Umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua Mikamocha v'rachamim, Zoche Yitzurav l'chayim v'rachamim, V'ne'aman atalach yot meitim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh ha'meitim. Amen.
Nekadesh shemcha b'yolam, Kishem shemakti shemoto b'shmei marom, Kakatuv al yad miyacha, V'kora zeh el zeh v'yomar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech haaretz kivodo, Yimatam Baruch Yomeru. Baruch Adonai Mimkomo, of the Reichat Shecha Katuv Lemar, Yimloch Adonai Li'olam, Elohai Tzion, L'Davador, Hallelujah. L'Davador Nagid Lod Lechol, Netzach Netzachim, Kiddush Chadcha Nakdish, Shivkacha Eloheinu Pino Lo Yamush Li'olam Voed, כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה.
You know these things?
Maybe for easy first.
All of us. Getting out from the right
Amen.
foot.
Amen.
Another minute. If you haven't yet finished your own personal Amidah, please do continue to daven at your own pace, but we are going to continue our service with Kaddish Shalem, the full Kaddish, page 441.
Yiskara v'yiskara shemei rabba.
Amen.
Yom mevakrute v'yamlich machute v'chayechonu v'yomechonu v'chayed chol beit Yisrael. Bagala uvizman koriv yimru. Amen.
Amen.
Yesh me rabba mevorach v'yolam niyom meyom maya yisparach V'yishtabach v'yitpa v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadav v'yitalev v'yitalav shmeri kudisha
Richu.
V'yelo li'ela mikol v'chasa v'shirasa tush v'chasa v'nechamasa damiram v'yalma v'yimeru
Amen.
Tiskal v'tzalosana so mikol Yisrael kadamad v'nishmaya v'yimeru
Amen.
Yeshlam Rav Mishmaya v'chayam aleinu v'alkol Yisrael v'yimeru
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mramav Uyaseh shalom
Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru imru amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen, amen. We continue now with the Aleinu. We are on page 442.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol
Latei kedula liyotzeh breshit shelo asanu kigoyei aratzot
V'lo
samanu k'mishpachot adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam v'anachnu korim
Ifnei melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'n'emar
V'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. You may be seated, you may be seated. And at this point in our service, now I'll invite anybody observing a yard site, anybody in mourning, anybody saying Kaddish, to please rise and join me in Kadisha Tom, the Mourner's Kaddish. We're on page 443. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah be'alma divrach cherutei ve'amlich malchutei B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yahesh Rabba mevorach le'olam u'le'omei amaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha brichu. Le'ela, le'ela, min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehesh lama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the memories of all of our loved ones be for a blessing. You may be seated, you may be seated.
Amen.
Erev Tov, Shana Tova, Gemar Chatima Tova. So in just a moment, we're going to begin our Kol Nidre service. But in preparation for my first Kol Nidre night at the Merritt Jewish Center, I read an incredibly powerful book. Came highly recommended by the likes of Oprah Winfrey and Jerry Seinfeld. It's called How to Forgive When You Can't Forget. Written by my friend, my colleague, my teacher, our Rabbi Charles Klein. And by way of introduction to our services tonight, I want to share with you a story from his book. The story transformed my thinking about Kol Nidre night and what we can accomplish here together over this Day of Atonement. The story is about two monks who were traveling together on a journey. And at one point, they came to a river with a strong current, and as the monks were preparing to cross the river, they saw a very young and beautiful woman also attempting to cross at the same time. And the woman asked if they could help her cross to the other side. The two monks glanced at one another because they had taken vows to never touch a woman. But then without a word, the older monk picked up the woman, he put her on his shoulders, and he carried her across the river, placed her gently on the other side, and then carried on with his journey. The younger monk couldn't believe what had just happened. And after rejoining his companion, he was speechless as they continued on their journey. He couldn't bring himself to talk. The anger, the frustration, the disappointment in his companion, it just continued to boil up inside. An hour passed, 2, then 3, and finally they arrived at the place where they were spending the night. The younger monk, he could no longer contain himself. He blurted out, "How could you do that? As monks, we're not permitted to touch a woman. How could you then carry that woman on your shoulders?" The older monk looked at him and replied, "Brother, I put the woman down on the other side of the river. Why is it that you're still carrying her with you?" We all carry a lot with us. We may find ourselves weighed down by anger, by broken promises, broken dreams, maybe some stress. In the past year, we've all experienced frustration, heartache, disappointments, which can be very heavy. It can be very heavy on our hearts, and it can weigh us down. And many of us come to the synagogue tonight on Yom Kippur with hopes of some relief and of some support, which is why it's my hope that through our time together, we can lighten the heavy loads that we carry. May our ancient traditions and our prayers on this Day of Atonement enable us to open up our hearts and put everything out there on the table. May they facilitate the difficult but necessary conversations that we need to have with ourselves, with others, and with God. May we have the strength and courage to let go of some of the heavy burdens that we carry with us, lightening our spirits. As we enter this new year together, may we arrive on the other side of the river with renewed strength and renewed sense of purpose, carrying ourselves and our community into a year filled with hope and with blessings. And let us say, Amen. Now at the Married Jewish Center, on Kol Nidre night, we have a beautiful custom. It's a beautiful custom of honoring members of our community for distinguished service. In some cases, decades of service, spanning back a lifetime, 40 years of service to our congregation and our community. And we honor these members with the holy task of holding a Torah as we recite our opening prayers. Which is why tonight it's my honor to recognize 21 individuals, really 23 individuals, from whom we are indebted to, for whom without their dedication and commitment to our community, none of what we accomplish together tonight, all year round, would be possible. So at this point in our service, I'm going to invite everybody to please rise, and we'll welcome Our first group: Stephen Greenfield, Saul Rosenberg, Alan Gershlak, Dan Greenberg, Brian Oken, George Feld, and Sid Lehrman, up to the bima. By the authority of the court on high and by the authority of this court below, with divine consent and with the consent of this congregation, we grant permission to pray with those who have transgressed. Cantor Warshawski will lead us. We're on the bottom of page 204.
Vishiva shel malo uvishiva shel mato al dat hamakom ve'al dat hakol Anu matirin leit palel im hoavarianim.
We'll now continue with Kol Nidre on the top of page 205.
Nidre Ve'esarei V'acharomei Ve'konomei Ve'chinuyei Ve'kinusei Shevot Din darno Udeishtabana Udeacharimna Udeacharimna Vediasarna Al nafsho sana Miyom Kippurim Ad Yom Kippurim Habaleinu Letova Kulhon Icharatna Vehon Kulhon Yehon Sharon Yehon Sharon Yehon Sharon Shevikin Shevitin Beteilin umebutalin Lo sheririn Velo kayamin Nidrana lo nidre Vesarana lo esare Shivosana Lo Shevos
We'll now invite up our second group of distinguished leaders of our community. Bob Phillips, Barry Wilansky, Jeffrey Rosenberg, Dr. Barry Silverman, Erwin Silversmith, and Michael Schwartz. And with this group, we're also honoring Rabbi Klein, who very humbly turned down the honor of carrying the Torah. We'll continue once again. We're on the top of page 205.
Kol Nidre Ve'yesarei V'charomei Ve'konomei Ve'chinuyei Ve'kinusei Shavuos Din darena Udei Udei acharimna, Udei acharimna, Bediasarna, Al nafsho sana, Miyom Kippurim Ad Yom Kippurim Habaleinu Letova Kulhon Icharatna Vehon Kulhon Yehon Sharon Yehon Sharon Yehon Sharon Shevisin Beteilin umevutalin Lo sherinin Velo kayamin Nidrana Lo nidrei ve'esarana Lo esarei Shevosana Lo Shevos.
We'll now call up the third group. Barry Silverman, Alan Sussman, Mindy Goldstein, Howard Teagle, Howie Siegel, Charlie Scopp, And in this group, we'll also honor Linda Altman and Bob Kroll, who I believe humbly turned down the honor of carrying the Torah. And we'll continue once again on the top of page 205.
Kol Nidre Ve'yesarei V'charomei Ve'kolomei Ve'chinuyei Ushevuos Dindarna Udeyishtabana Udeyacharimna Dindarna Udeyishtabana Udeyacharimna V'diasarna Al nafsho sana Miyom Kippurim Ad Yom Kippurim Haba Aleinu letova Kol hon Icharatena vehon Kol hon Yehon Sharon, Yehon Sharon, Yehon Sharon, Shevikin, Shevitin, Beteilin umebutalin, lo sherinin, velo kayomin. Lo nidre ve'esarana lo esare Shevuosana 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 lo Shevos.
The entire congregation of the people Israel shall be forgiven, as well as the stranger who dwells among them, for all have erred. We continue now, middle of page 205.
V'nislach lechol adas b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagor b'socham ki lechol ha'am bishgaga v'nislach lechol adas b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagor b'socham ki lechol ha'am bishgaga v'nislach lechol adas b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagor b'socham ki lechol ha'am bishgaga. Selach no lavon ha'am hazeh כגודל חסדך וכאשר נוסס על העם הזה ממצרים ועד הנה ושם נאמר ויאמר אדוני סלח Salachti kidevarecha Vayomer Adonai Salachti kidevarecha Vayomer Adonai Salachti kidevarecha Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Sheheyanu v'kiyemanu v'higianu lazman hazeh 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 Lazman
Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of time and space. Thank you for granting us life, for sustaining us, and for bringing us to this very moment. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated as the ark is closed.
You need this off here?
Gemar Chatima Tova, everybody, welcome. And for those who are joining us virtually, welcome as well. We're thrilled that you're able to be here with us tonight. Now, more often than not, when I tell people that I left San Diego to move to Long Island, they tell me I'm crazy. And after a weather week like this, they might be right. And that's because San Diego is one of the most beautiful places in the country. Perfect weather. The zoo, we have Disneyland, Legoland. Aside, the landscape is also stunning. The beaches, hiking, natural beauty is extraordinary, but the architecture and the skyline is just as enchanting. And one of the most remarkable buildings that I have ever encountered is the Geisel Library. It was designed to incorporate the spirit of its namesake, Dr. Theodore Geisel, who we know as Dr. Seuss. The building is an upside-down pyramid. It's the focal point of the University of California, San Diego's gorgeous campus. It's featured on all of their promotional materials. It's part of the university's official seal. And it's become an iconic symbol of the university and architectural ingenuity but not necessarily for all the right reasons. See, according to a legend, and I want to emphasize that this is just a legend that was shared with me when I first toured the campus, the third floor of the library is empty because the building, after it was first built, it was filled with books, but the foundation started to crumble. And that's because, according to this legend, as beautiful and stunning as the building is when designing it, the architects failed to take into account the hundreds of thousands of pounds of books that it was supposed to hold. And on the surface, the architect created a beautiful structure, but somewhere along the line lost sight of purpose and of mission. They built a library that couldn't house any books. Now, just last week, we celebrated Rosh Hashanah. We celebrated the creation of the world. But in the Midrashic work, Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, it reminds us that God's first attempt at creating the world wasn't so successful. It was destroyed in a flood. And it offers a parable explaining why. Lema davar domet. To what is this matter similar? To a king who wishes to build an elaborate and a beautiful palace for himself. One with multiple stories, decorative ballrooms, and fancy staircases, maybe even an in-house caterer. But according to Rabbi Eliezer, the king wouldn't dare begin to build his palace unless he first planned out what he wanted it to look like, traced its foundations into the ground, mapped out its exits and entrances. If he didn't, the palace would most surely collapse, as did the world. So according to the Midrash, God tried again, but this time after envisioning some of the pillars and foundations of the world, like chesed, kindness, and rachamim, compassion. Only then, there was some sort of plan in place, a vision, a picture of what the world could be and could look like. Only then would God be able to create a world that could endure. Building, creating is challenging enough. But it becomes near impossible if we don't have a vision at the end of the day of what it is that we're trying to build. It's hard to believe, but I've been the rabbi of the Merrick Jewish Center for almost 3 whole months. And between us, I haven't really done that much yet. Don't get me wrong. I have been incredibly busy, but I have spent the vast majority of my first few months at the MJC learning, observing, and listening. Learning about the community, observing the customs, the culture, and traditions, and listening to our members. Thinking about the role that our synagogue, really any synagogue, but our synagogue in the 21st century can play in the lives of a community and its members. Between the parlor meetings, dozens of coffee dates, you have shared with me your oys and joys, your hopes and your dreams for what the Merrick Jewish Center can be and should be for the community and for its members. And we took notes. So in preparation for tonight, I looked through them. And it's amazing. The adage, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, comes to mind. We want to add more English readings and prayers, more teachings and explanations into our services, all while making them significantly shorter. We want our children to learn more Hebrew while attending Hebrew school less. We want Everything to be different, but nothing to change. It's actually fascinating. Which is why tonight, in lieu of a traditional sermon, I want to take a step back and talk big picture. I want to share with you some of what I have learned. Specifically, there were 7 themes and patterns that emerged from my interactions so far, which painted a picture for me of what we want our synagogue, what our synagogue can be, which I want to share with you, so that in the coming days, weeks, months, and years ahead, we can build it together. Number 1, our synagogue is a place in which we encounter the profound nature of our traditions as can be embraced through our contemporary experience. The wisdom, beauty, and richness of our heritage that developed over thousands of years comes alive in our synagogue. Our synagogue is a platform for deep engagement with Judaism, which has a true diversity of manifestations, such as Torah study, cultivating a relationship with God, prayer, engaging Israel, performing mitzvot, ethical refinement, music, art, and spiritual explorations. All of these elements of our tradition should be available in a synagogue. All segments of our community are actively engaged in study and education, from young children to the elderly. Number 2, our synagogue is a place in which every human being is treated as a reflection of God's image. All people who enter our synagogue are welcomed with acceptance and open arms, regardless of their ethnicity, sexual identity, abilities, or religious background. All members of our community are cared for when they are in need, as they are. All people who enter our synagogue are challenged to grow as learners, as Jews, or people connected to Jews, and as human beings. While there is a diversity of beliefs and practices in our community, our synagogue aspires to be a vehicle for everyone to deepen their commitments to study, to prayer, to mitzvot, to acts of chesed, kindness, and justice, spiritual growth, and ethical choices. Number 3, our synagogue is a place of inspiration and deep spiritual meaning. Our Shabbat services are a communal experience that is soulful and encourages active participation, joyous singing, and contemplative silence. Prayer is an opportunity to express gratitude for being alive and seek comfort for our praying. Prayer takes on many different forms. Music and singing should be pervasive in our synagogue, from the sanctuary on Shabbat to the school classrooms during the week. And with Cantor Warshawski, we have a generational talent. We have only begun to scratch the surface of what is possible. Number 4, our synagogue is home. Our synagogue strives to build and facilitate lasting connections between people. We care deeply about one another. Relationships with each other are at the heart of our community. We offer programs of social, cultural, and religious nature aimed at strengthening those relationships. Children of all ages are welcome and encouraged to participate in all areas of synagogue life. Everyone, absolutely everyone mentioned that they wanted to see more children in the synagogue. But children need to be able to be children. There is nothing more beautiful than the sound of a child laughing, crying, running around, and playing in the synagogue, regardless of what else is going on. Our synagogue schools and educational programming provide learners with the opportunity to grow in ways that are meaningful and fulfilling for them. Our synagogue provides scaffolding for learners of all ages to explore their Judaism and their relationship with Judaism. Our synagogue community accepts a diversity of religious outlooks and practices without judgment. People must feel safe to show up as they are without apologies for their beliefs and practices. Each person's belief and practices will be respected, and each person will respect that our shared communal norms are determined through the framework of conservative halakha of Jewish law under the direction of the rabbi. Number 5. The synagogue celebrates Israel as the center of the Jewish people whose destiny is wrapped up in the fate of the Jewish state. Our synagogue supports Israel. Our synagogue cultivates deep engagement with Israel through culture, religion, and spiritually or politics. We aim to involve everyone in the community in meaningful conversations and programming about Israel. We value and seek to facilitate open dialogue between people who are passionate about their connections and beliefs regarding Israel. The synagogue welcomes multiple viewpoints and does not sanction one in particular. The heart of Israel engagement is spending time in the Jewish state. When possible, we commit resources to bring community members to Israel and provide everyone who has never visited the opportunity to experience Israel. 6. We're almost done. 6. Our synagogue recognizes that 21st century Jewish identity is complex and resistant to simple categorizations. Our synagogue is composed of people with a variety of identities and conceptions of being Jewish. We celebrate when families make the decision to take that Jewish identity seriously, regardless of how they define their Jewishness. We recognize that some interfaith families face unique challenges, and we aim to support them as they explore these challenges. We believe that interfaith families should be integrated into the larger community. And number 7, our synagogue is a community in which people actively work to make the world a more just and compassionate place. Our synagogue engages in communal projects aimed at bringing healing to the broken places of our society. Our community encourages each individual to utilize his or her power and resources to give tzedakah to the causes that are dear to them. The world is a fractured and broken place with many people suffering and in pain. Our synagogue is a source of healing for this brokenness. We will hold people up when they are in need of support, and we will dance with people as they celebrate life's joys. Now, I know this isn't a typical sermon, but given some of the conversations that we've had together over the past few months, I felt compelled to share with you my vision, our vision, of what a synagogue is and the role it could play in our lives and in our community. Like every community, the Merrick Jewish Center has strengths and weaknesses. I know that there have been times when we have fallen short of our vision and values, and for that I am sorry. Tonight, at Kol Nidre and on Yom Kippur, I'm asking for forgiveness for the times that I, as your rabbi, the times that we as a community have disappointed, and for the times in the future that we will as well. Now, my family and I, we weren't crazy for leaving San Diego. Let's see if we still feel that way in the winter. But we weren't crazy, because as beautiful as it is there, when we looked at the big picture vision of our lives, it wasn't there. It was here, closer to family, with all of you. And in that vein, moving to Merrick, as challenging as it was one of the easiest decisions that we ever made. I think about the Geisel Library. I think about our Midrash. I think about our community. I'm excited to share my vision. It's a shared vision, the blueprints of what our community can be. You know, the most important thing I learned is that I still have a lot to learn. Things are constantly changing. Who would have thought that in 1970, when the Geisel Library was built, that today, some of the most advanced and state-of-the-art libraries don't have any books? I'm excited. I'm excited to get my hands dirty. I'm excited to start building together a community that not only meets our members' needs, but far outweighs our wildest expectations with all of you. One of the most famous piyuts of the High Holy Days, we recited it several times on Rosh Hashanah. We said, Hayom Harat Olam, that the world is pregnant with possibilities. And today, as we embark on the next chapter of the Merit Jewish Center, the same is true. The possibilities are endless, and the future is now. Over the coming years, my hope and prayer for all of us is that we can come together. We can continue to work together and strive to be better together, which is what I believe Yom Kippur and the High Holy Days are all about. It's my prayer for all of us, this High Holy Day season and beyond, that we continue to grow stronger together, closer together as a community in pursuit of our shared vision. And let us say, Amen. I'm going to go back over there. And at this point, now we're going to continue with our service. I'll invite you to please rise as Cantor Warshawski will lead us in the Baruch Hu, top of page 207.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue. We're on the bottom of page 207.
Umavir Yom Umevi Laila Umavdil Ben Yom Ben Laila Adonai Tzivaot Shemo El Chai V'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed Baruch Ato Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
Amari Varavim.
Amen. We continue top of page 208.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Chavta Torah Mitzvos Chokim U'Mishpatim Otanu Limadito Al Keinu Le'Leim Ki Hem Chayeinu Be'orech Yameinu Uvahem Nege Yomam V'Halayla V'Ahavatecha Al Tasir Mimenu Li'olamim Baruch Ato Adonai Ohei V'Amo Yisrael.
Amen. We continue together with the Shema. We're on page 208.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed Ve'yohavta et Adonai Elohecha V'chol levavecha U'v'chol nafshecha U'v'chol me'odecha Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele Asher Anochi Mitzavecha Hayom Levavecha Veshinantam Levanecha V'dibarta bam B'shivtecha V'beitecha U'v'letecha V'derech U'v'shachbecha U'v'kumecha U'kshartam le'yot al yadecha V'hayu letodafot b'eineinecha U'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha U'visharecha. V'zavata yishamaru lachem penim tovim V'chol ha'afon V'liman atem otam et b'nechem l'adam למען יבואי ממך ובנך ויאמר אדוני משה לאמור דבר בני ישראל אמרתי להם בסולם ציציס על כאן פבידיהם והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו וזכרתם לכל ולא תטורו אחרי לכם תזכרו אני אדוני לכם אשר ציציס חמי אשר מצסכם לכם אמת Adonai Elohechem emet V'emunu kol zot v'kayem aleinu Ki hu Adonai Eloheinu ve'en zulato Ve'anachnu Yisrael amo Ha'makar beros U'malchuto v'ratzon Ki hiblu aleihem Moshe u'bnei Yisrael Lechanu shira V'simcha rabah Mi kamocha boelim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh Norot tehilot Osef Malchutecha בוקי היום לפני משה זה אלי ענו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם אמן ונאמר כי פדו אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד החזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני
ברוך שמו
כל ישראל
Amen. We continue around page 211.
ושמור צאתנו בהורינו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורי סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
Please rise as we continue with the Chatzi Kaddish, middle of page 212.
כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לטהר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני תטהרו יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה אמן ועלמא דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחיי חון וביומי חון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם לעולמי ולעולמי עולמי יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לעילה מכל ברכתו ושירתו תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירון בעלמא
We now continue with the silent Amidah. It can be found on page 213.
זוכרים לחיים מלך וביץ בחיים ועוזים וזה בחיים למען חלוהים חיים מלך וזהו השם אמן. מי חמוך אברהם דוד ולחם רחם ובחיים זה לחם ושים לו חתור לבדך חמאס רבן שם קדוש וקבל משמח ולבח אוכל טוב לחיים טובים, קול נדרי איתך. שלום רב. בספר חיים ברוב שם בפניך. אנחנו בית ישראל חיים טובים לשלום, לא אדוק הדברים ונעשה שלום. אתה יודע רוזי אורסיסו ניסה למורסיס וקול חיים שתסלח לנו על כוחת זה ושמחה לנו על כוחת זה ושחפר לנו על כוחת זה
If you haven't yet finished your Amidah, please do continue to daven at your own pace. But we are going to continue our service now with Slichot, with the Piyutim, the liturgical texts that inspire us to be reflective, to ask for forgiveness, and also in hopes of being forgiven. And I'll invite us to remain standing or to please rise as the ark is opened. And we continue with Ya'aleh on the top of page 223.
Yahale Tachanunenu Me'ere Ve'ahavo Shavosenu Mi'boker Ve'yeno Eninunenu Adorev Yahale Kolenu Me'ere Ve'ahavo Tzidkosenu Mi'boker Ve'yeno Efidyonenu Adorev Yaleinu Yeinu Me'erev Ve'yavo Selichoteinu Ve'yeroen akoteinu adorev adorev Yahale Menuseinu Me'ere Ve'ahavo Lemano Mi'boker Ve'yeno Egimureinu Adorev Yahale Isheinu Me'ere Ve'ahavo Torreinu Mi'boker Ve'yeno Echinuneinu Adorev Yahale Zichroneinu Me'erev Ve'yavo V'yudeinu Mi'boker Ve'yeroe Hadrateinu Adorev Yale Dafkeinu Me'erev Ve'yavo Gileinu Mi'boker Ve'yeroe Bakoshoteinu Adorev Yale Enkateinu Me'erev Ve'yavo Eilecha Mi'boker Ve'yeroe Adorev
Thanks for bringing us home, Cantor Warshawski. The ark is closed. You may be seated. We continue top of page 225.
Skojach, you nailed it. Yep. Haneshamalach vehaguf palach usalamalach Haneshamalach vehaguf shelach Adonai yaseh leman shemecha Osanu al shimcha Adonai yaseh leman shemecha Bavur kevod shemecha ki yelchanu melachum shemecha Leman shimcha Adonai v'salachtu la'avoneinu ki rahavu.
We'll read responsively in the English on the left-hand side of page 225, beginning with the second paragraph. We come before you relying on who you are. According to your glorious nature, help us. You are known as gracious, compassionate God. Forgive then our sins, though it is great. Your way is to be patient with sinners, not only with the righteous. That is the source of our praise for you. For your sake, not ours, God help us. See how we stand before you, humbled and empty-handed. We now continue, top of page 226.
Tavur al beja v'simchei Hashem k'yom ha'yisyatze mimosham Ta'azin shavotenu v'sakshivmenu ma'amar K'yom v'yikra b'shem Adonai b'shem Adonai V'yavor Adonai al panav v'yikra.
Please rise as we continue, bottom of page 226.
Adonai, Adonai, Erachum v'chanun Erech apayim v'rav chesed v'yemet Noser chesed la'alafim Nosei avon v'chesha v'chata v'nakeh V'salat Rabbeinu chesed v'chatonu selach lanu Amin g'irtanu ma'alanu v'gerim v'shoganu Ki ato Adonai tov v'solach V'rav chesed l'chol korecha.
We remain standing as the ark is open on page 227. We'll recite this next piyut responsively with the cantor, every other paragraph, Hebrew and English.
Kine kach omer biyad hayotzer Birtzoso marchiv uvirtzoto mekatzer Kein anachnu biyadecha chesed notzer La brita beit, la brita beit La brita beit, la brita beit Me'al deifen la yetzer.
As stone in the hands of the mason who preserves or breaks it at will, so are we in your hand, God of life and death. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser.
Kine ke garzen beyad hecharash birtzoso dibek laor uvirtzoso peirash kein anachnu beyadecha tomecha nivarash labris habeit ve'al teifen la yetzer.
As the helm in the hand of the sailor who holds the course or abandons it at will, so are we in your hand, good and forgiving God. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser.
כי הנה כזכוכיס ביד המזגג, ברצוסו חוגג וברצוסו ממוגג. כן אנחנו בידך, מוכל זדון ושוגג, לבריס הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, ואל תפן ליצר.
As cloth in the hand of the draper who drapes or twists it at will, so are we in your hand, righteous God. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser.
כי הנה ככסף ביד הצורף, ברצוסו משגשג וברצוסו מצרף. כן אנחנו בידך, ממציא למזר טרף, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, ואל תפן ליצר.
We remain standing as we continue top of page 232. The ark is closed.
אל מלך יושב על כיסא רחמים, אל מלך יושב על כיסא רחמים, מתנהג בחסידות, מתנהג בחסידות, מוחל עוונות עמו, מעביר ראשון ראשון, מעביר ראשון ראשון, מרבה מחילה לחטאים וסליחה לפושעים. עושה צדקות עם כל בשר ורוח, עושה צדקות עם כל בשר ורוח, לא כרעסם תגמול. אל הרי סהלנו לומר 13 וזכור לנו היום ברית 13 כמו שהודעת ליונוב מקדם, כמו שכתוב, וירד אדוני בענן, ויתייצב עמו שם, ויקרא בשם אדוני. ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא, אדוני אדוני אל רחום וחנון, ארך אפיים
ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא וננקה.
וסלחת לעווננו וחטאתנו וחטאנו, סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו וחטאנו וכינו פשענו, כי אתה אדוני טוב וסולח ורב חסד לכל קוראיך.
You may be seated momentarily as we continue in the middle of page 232.
Hazinu Adonai Divilosenu Vakashiva V'kol Tachanu Nosenu Vakashiva L'kol Shaveinu Malkeinu Eloheinu Ki Elecho Nispalel Kirachem Oval Bonim Kein Tirachem Adonai Oleinu Adonai Hoshia Al Amcha B'Rosach Osel Selach no lavono masek godel chazdecha B'chasher nosas l'yom hazeh miMitzrayim yadheina V'sham ne'emar V'yomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha.
A young pious man, a curious man who prayed every day was frustrated. He felt as though his prayers were never answered. So he demanded an audience with God, and he was granted the opportunity to ask God 3 questions. First, he asked God how long 1,000,000 years was in God's time. God replied, 1,000,000 years to me is just like a second is to you. Then the young man asked God what $1,000,000 was like to God. God replied, $1,000,000 to me is just like a single penny is to you. Then the young man mustered up all his courage and asked God, could I have but just one of your pennies? God smiled and replied, certainly. The man was so happy he started crying, but then God continued, I'll get it for you in just a second. Throughout the course of the High Holy Days, we offer a lot of prayers, a lot of petitions to God. And in just a moment, we'll recite the Shema Kolenu. Well, we'll ask that God hears and listens to our prayers. Sometimes our prayers are answered right away. Other times, it seems like we may be waiting forever for an answer. Sometimes, we might not like the answer that we get. Nevertheless, I'd like to think that God is always listening. Sometimes I fear that it's us that may need to listen just a bit more closely. I'll invite us to please rise as the ark is opened, and we continue on page 233 with the Shema Kolenu. We'll repeat each one after the cantor in the Hebrew.
Shema Kolenu Adonai Eloheinu Chus V'rachem Aleinu Aleinu Nikabel Berachamim Uvratzon Et Tefilateinu
Shema Kolenu Adonai Eloheinu Chus V'rachem Aleinu V'kabel Berachamim Uvratzon Et Tefilateinu
Hashiveinu Adonai Eilecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Gengedem
Hashivenu Adonai lecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kekedem.
ברוח קודשך אל תיקח ממנו.
אל תשליכנו מלפניך ורוח קודשך אל תיקח ממנו.
תשליכנו לעת זקנה, לעת זקנה. ככלות כוחנו, ככלות כוחנו, אל תעזבנו.
אל תשליכנו לעת זקנה, כי כלות כוחנו, אל תעזבנו.
אל תעזבנו אל תיקח ממנו. עשה עמנו עוד לטובה, ויראו שונאינו ביבושו. כי אתה אדוני עזרתנו וניחמתנו. אמרנו האזינה אדוני בינה הגיגנו. ילוצן רפאים Adonai Eloheinu.
The ark is closed, but we remain standing as we continue on page 234.
Eloheinu ve'Eloi avoteinu, al tazveinu ve'al titcheinu ve'al dachlimeinu ve'al dever b'nizcha itanu. קרבנו לצורסך ולמדנו מצווסך אורינו דרכך הליבנו ליראה את שמך ומלדנו לעבוסך ונשוב אליך באמס ובלב ובשלם ולמען שמך הגדול תמחה ותסלח לעווננו ככתוב בדברי קודשך למען שמך אדוני וסלחת לעווני כי רב הוא.
We continue top of page 234.
Perfect. Eloheinu ve'Eloi avoteinu, selach lanu mechalanu, kaper lanu. כי אנו עמך ואתה אלוהינו, אנו בניך ואתה אבינו, אנו עבדיך ואתה אדוננו,
Anu kehalecha ve'ata chelkeinu. Anu
נחלותיך
ve'ata goraleinu. Anu tzonecha ve'ata
רואינו
Anu farmecha ve'ata notreinu. Anu feulotecha ve'ata yotzreinu. Anu rayotecha ve'ata dodeinu.
אנו סגולתך
ve'ata
קרובינו
Anu amecha ve'ata malkeinu. Anu mamirecha ve'ata mamirenu.
אנו הזיפונים יתורך מחנון אנו כשיורם ידו רבים אנו מלא עוון ואתה מלא רחמים אנו ימינו כצל עובר ויתוש נוסך לא יתמו אלוהינו רבותינו תבוא לבונך דבינוסינו ביד סלם מדרינוסינו שאין אנחנו הזיפונים וגשי עורף לומר לפונך אדוני אלוהינו ורבותינו צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו אבל אנחנו ואבותינו חטאנו.
We continue together, top of page 235. It's customary to lightly strike ourselves as we recite each one of the shorter confessionals. Once again, top of page 235.
Ay, 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 ay,
Hashamnu,
Bodanu,
Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi, La 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 Hevinu vehirshanu Zanu chamasnu Tafalnu sheker La 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 Yatsnura Kizavnu Latsnu Maranu Niyatsnu Saranu Avinu Pashanu Saranu Kishinu Oref La 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 Rashanu Shithanu Tiyavnu Tainu
Titanu Sarnu Mimetosach Mishpotach Adovim Velo Shavalanu Miaton Zadik Al Kol Aboleinu Ki Emezon Sisa Ve'anachnu Hireshanu.
We'll now continue top of page 237. The ark will be opened as Cantor Warshawski will lead us in the Alchet, the longer confessional.
Alchein שגדול לבנך באונס וברצון והלchein שגדול לבנך באימוץ הלב
אלוהינו שגדול לפניך באימוץ הלב
זלזול הורמור וחישלון ובזנום שגדול Alchein שגדול לבנך ביצר הרע והלchein שגדול גדול לבונך ויהודים ובלא יהודים מעל כולם אלוהי סליחות סלח לנו מחל לנו כפר לנו הלכי ג'גדול לבונך בכך ובחוזב מהלכי ג'גדול לבונך בכף שולחן הלכי ג'גדול לבונך ולצל הלכי ג'גדול לבונך ולשנה הלכי ג'גדול במעשה ומתן הלכי ג'גדול לבונך במחל ובמשתה הלכי ג'גדול לבונך בנשק ובמרב הלכי ג'גדול לבונך תיוס גורן הלכי ג'גדול לבונך בסירס ובזין הלכי ג'גדול לבונך הלכי ג'גדול לבונך בעיניים רמות והלכי ג'גדול לבונך בעזוס מצח מעל כולם אלוהי סליחות סלח לנו מחל לנו כפר לנו מעל כולם אלוהי סליחות סלח לנו מחל לנו סלח לנו מחל לנו כפר לנו.
We'll now read responsively in the English middle paragraph, left-hand side of page 238. We have sinned against you by throwing off all restraint, and we have sinned against you by rashly judging others. We have sinned against you by plotting against others, and we have sinned against you through selfishness. We have sinned against you through superficiality, and we have sinned against you through stubbornness. We have sinned against you by rushing to do evil, and we have sinned against you through gossip. We have sinned against you through empty promises. We have sinned against you through baseless hatred. We have sinned against you by betraying trust, and we have sinned against you by succumbing to confusion. Together, for all of these sins, forgiving God, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
ויעל כולם אלוהי סליחות סלח לנו מחל לנו כפר לנו ויעל כולם אלוהי סליחות סלח לנו מחל לנו סלח לנו מחל לנו כפר לנו.
The ark is closed. You may be seated for a brief moment as we continue bottom paragraph, page 242, Rachamana.
No Mishana? No Mishana?
Just kidding. We're going to continue middle of page 240, Mishnah, middle of the page.
Thank you. Sorry. We sang a beautiful song together on Slichot. I'd like to sing it with you tonight. Hu Ya'anenu are the words. We say them over and over again. Let's sing together. Hu Ya'anenu, Hu Ya'anenu. We can do better than that. Let's do this again. Hu Ya'anenu, Hu Ya'anenu. Mishana le'saraymenu beziknasa. Hu Ya'anenu. Mishana le'Avraham avinu v'Navoniah. Hu Ya'anenu. Mishana le'Yitzchak banam k'shenekar al givay mizbeach. Hu Ya'anenu. Mishana le'Yaakov bebeisel. Hu Ya'anenu. Hu Ya'anenu. Hu Ya'anenu. Mishanal Yosef Beis Asurim Hu Ya'aneinu Mishanal Avoseinu Al Yam Suf Hu Ya'aneinu Mishanal Moshe Bechorev Hu Ya'aneinu Hu Ya'aneinu Hu Ya'aneinu Mishanal Yaharon B'machta Hu Ya'aneinu Mishanal Finchas B'kamo mitoch ha'edah Hu Ya'aneinu Mishanal Ibnu Silachal B'amdon Pesach Al Moed Hu Ya'aneinu Mishanal Echol HaTzadikim Ve'achasidim Ve'hatamimim V'hayesharim Hu Ya'aneinu Hu Ya'aneinu Hu Ya'aneinu.
So insurance companies have a phrase that they use when something happens to you or your property that is beyond your control. They call it an act of God, which are the exact same words that are being used on the news over and over again when describing Hurricane Ian and what has transpired down the coast in the southeastern part of the United States. And right before the holiday, I was in touch with one of my best friends. He's a rabbi. He actually co-officiated my wedding with my brother. He's a rabbi in South Carolina, in Charleston. And they actually had to cancel services this past Shabbat because of the hurricane. They lost power in the synagogue. And thankfully, I was talking to him. They were able to get things back to a place where they could be back online for the holiday tonight, for Yom Kippur. They were lucky. There are lots of other communities that were not so lucky. The news, the pictures, the stories, it's devastating. The death toll, the destruction, it's heartbreaking. Maybe better warning systems and shelters, but at the end of the day, there is little, if anything, we can do to avoid the devastation, to avoid the destruction of acts of God. It's simply what happens when people settle in vulnerable areas. Sometimes all we can do is watch. All we can do is hope and pray as these acts of God have a catastrophic effect on human life. In the Avinu Malkeinu, we will reflect on acts of God, on evil decrees, natural disasters that are seemingly beyond our control. All we can do is hope and pray as we ask God for compassion. As we recite the Avinu Malkeinu, we not only pray for those who are suffering, but we ask for God's compassion and the ability to persevere with whatever will come our way. Please rise as the ark is opened. We continue page 243.
Next year. Yom Kippur Haba. Avinu Malkeinu chatanu lefanecha Avinu Malkeinu en lanu melech elata Chadesh aleinu shana tova Avinu Malkeinu batel me'aleinu kol gezeros kashos Avinu Malkeinu, Achasirinu b'teshuva shlema lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chachatzirinu b'teshuva shlema lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu shelach refuah shlema lechol yamecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, shlach refuah shlema lechol yamecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, zachrenu b'zikaron tov lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, zachrenu b'zikaron tov lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu gazveinu b'sefer chayim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer chayim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer geula v'yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer geula v'yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu kotvenu b'sefer parnosa v'chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer zichuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer zechuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu kotvenu b'sefer selicha u'mechila.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer slicha u'mechila.
Avinu Malkeinu asmach lanu yeshu b'karav. Avinu Malkeinu erem keren Yisrael amecha. Avinu Malkeinu kerem Yisrael. Avinu Malkeinu shmach Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu no al tishivinu nekama v'necha. Avinu Malkeinu zavach yivarach. Avinu Malkeinu chalal. Avinu Malkeinu selaman tevuchim al yechudach. Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu v'Aneinu. Avinu Malkeinu,
Chaneinu v'Aneinu, ki ein banu maasim. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu.
Avinu Malkeinu,
Chaneinu v'Aneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu v'Aneinu, ki ein banu maasim. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed,
v'hoshienu.
The ark is closed, but we remain standing as we continue with Kaddish Shalem, the full Kaddish, bottom of page 245.
יתגדל ויתקדש מהרה הבא
אמן.
וילמד דברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בהגלה ובזמן קריב והימרו
אמן.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה
יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשא שמי לקודשא בריחו לעילא לעילא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא והימרו
אמן.
תתקבל צלותון ובאותון דכל בית ישראל קודם אבוהון דבשמיא והימרו
אמן.
יש לומר רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל והימרו
אמן.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל והימרו
אמן.
Amen.
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 The ark is opened. We continue with Aleinu, page 246.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים מיוסד
הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו וגבי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפת זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום להשיב אותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחתינו אין עוד. כי המלכות של אלוהי ולא מעטים לו בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר בהיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד,
ושמו
אחד. You may be seated. At this point in our service, I'm going to invite all those in mourning, all those observing a yard site, all those saying Kaddish to please join me in Kaddish Tom, the Mourner's Kaddish. We're on page 247. Once again, it's page 247. Yit Gadal ve'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma divrach hirutei ve'ablich malchutei B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'le'omei almaya Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yithadar, v'yita'aleh, v'yithalal, shemei dekudesha brichu. La'ela, la'ela, min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the memories of all our loved ones be for a blessing. It is now my privilege and my pleasure to welcome up to the beam of the president of our congregation, Howard Teagle, for some announcements.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good Yontif, everybody. So Yashar Koach to everybody who on the Bima and around the sanctuary contributed so meaningfully to tonight's services. Just a couple of brief announcements. Tomorrow we're going to be leaving this bag for you on or near your chair, and this is for something called Project Replenish, which is our effort to help fill the shelves of the Rudman Family Food Pantry at the Mid-Island YJCC. So you'll see this around your chair or on your chair tomorrow. Please do see the flyer that will be attached, and you can see the details in terms of the items that we request that you bring back to the MJC within that bag later during the week. Just a couple of scheduling announcements. Tomorrow morning services begin at 8:15 a.m. right here in the Rabbi Charles A. Klein Sanctuary. Pre-service supervision for children will start at 9:30, and children and teen services will be at 10 o'clock. We expect Yizkor to start at approximately 10:45. Our healing service led by the rabbi and the cantor will be at 3:30 p.m. Mincha at approximately 4:45, followed by Ne'ilah at around 6. And Yom Kippur will conclude at 7:11 p.m. with the sounding of the shofar. If you saw the message that we sent out earlier today, all children are invited to join us on the Bima for the final sounding of the shofar. We will have a gift for them that will enable them to participate in that way. That's it for me. So to everyone, may you and your families be sealed for a good year. Gemar Chatima Tova.
Just one quick correction to the schedule. I believe we advertised that the Yizkor service, the community Yizkor service, is at 3:30, and the healing service starts at 4 o'clock. I think that we announced the other time. So again, the community Yizkor service is at 3:30, and the healing service, led by myself and the cantor, is at 4 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. I want to wish a Yashar Koach to Cantor Warshawski for beautifully leading us in our services tonight. And again, just I want to thank for those of us who are here and joining us virtually. Your presence was felt in our sanctuary this morning as well. Thank you to Helena Eisenberg for our wonderful children's programming, and also Donna Bartolomeo, our executive director, for making sure that tonight ran off as smoothly as possible. There'll be a lot more thank yous tomorrow night, but I just want to share a few brief closing words before we finish our service with Yigdal, which is on page 250, and that is that to forgive is not to forget. To forgive is really to remember that nobody is perfect, that each of us stumbles when we want so much to stay upright, that each of us says things we wish we had never said, that we can all forget that love is more important than being right. To forgive is really to remember that we are so much more than our mistakes, that we are often more kind and caring, that accepting another's flaws can help us accept our own. To forgive is to remember that the odds are pretty good that we might soon need to be forgiven ourselves. That life sometimes gives us more than we can handle gracefully. To forgive is to remember that we have room in our hearts to begin again and again and again. If you're fasting, have an easy fast. Gemar Chatima Tova. May we all be inscribed for the coming year with health, happiness, contentment, and peace. We conclude our services with Yigdal, page 250.
Yigdal Elohim Chai V'yishtabach Nimtza v'yenet El Metziuto Echad v'yen Yachid Keyichudo Ne'elam v'gam Ein Sof Le'achduto Ein lo demut haguf Ve'eino guf lo na'aroch elav kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon ve'ein reshit reshito hino adon olam lechol nosar yo regedulato Malchuto Shefan Nevuato Netano El Asher Segulato Reshevarto Lo Kam Yisrael Kemo She'onaviu Ma'abit Et Emunato Torah Emet Natan le'amoel Ayad Nevio Ne'eman Beito Lo Yachal Yifa'el Velo Yamir Dato Le'olamim Le'zulahato Sof Ve'yodea Sitarenu Ma'abit Le'sof Davar V'kadmato Gomer le'ish Chesed kemifalo Noten lerasha Raket mishato Yishlach leketz yamin Meshichenu Livdot mechakeketz Yeshuato Metim yechayel Baruch Hasdo Baruch Adeyad Shem Tehilato Meitim Yechayel Baruch Hasdo Baruch Adeyad Shem Tehilato. A good year, everybody. A good year. Shana Tova. Shana Tova.
No, I'm a musher. That's right. That's why you have a social group. Oh, is there a home? Yes, I pray.
There you are.